Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on COVID-19 business support from Mid-Sussex District Council. My name is Councillor Jonathan Ash-Edwards. I'm the leader of the council. I'm going to chair this session. I'm also joined by Kevin Stewart, who's the council's business unit leader for revenues and benefits. Kevin's job normally is dealing with business rates, payments and housing benefit claims, but has now also taken on all of the business support grants work, which is a very considerable undertaking. And the purpose of this webinar really is to help share with you the current position on business support and grants. What was a very straightforward position last year in the early stages of the pandemic in terms of what was available has become quite complex, just as a result of the way the government has made different grants available for different sets of restrictions that have been in place to deal with the pandemic. And so hopefully this webinar will bring that to life and simplify it for you and give you some more clarity about what is available for your business, because there is a lot of financial support at the moment available to help get people through to the other side of the pandemic. And we're really keen to ensure that Mid-Sussex businesses are getting everything that you are able to get to help you get to the other side when hopefully things can get a little bit more normal. Just do a bit of housekeeping to start. We've got a large number of people on this call, which is fantastic. And we've got about 220 people registered. So we do need to try and keep what we're doing quite disciplined. This session is being live streamed and recorded on YouTube for anyone who's not able to join but wants to look back. So I would just encourage people to keep your videos off, both for your own privacy, but also it helps the streaming capability and capacity if we have a very small number of videos on, so that'd be really helpful. Kevin's going to do a presentation to take you through all of the current different grant schemes. And we'll do questions at the end. Two different ways if you want to put a question. So either in the chat box, if you send a message to me, Jonathan Ash-Edwards, then I, at the end of Kevin's presentation, will go through those questions and pose them to Kevin or answer them myself as appropriate. Or if you wait to the end and just raise your hand, I'll then come to you so you can ask your question live. So two options really there according to whatever you prefer. Everyone's muted at the moment. If I could ask you to stay muted until I call you to ask your question. If you have any issues during the Zoom from a technical point of view, then if you send a message through the chat function to Alex Austin or Aidan Gaff, they're the officers just supporting the running of this session, and they'll be able to help you from any technical points of view. Okay, Kevin, if we could go on to the next slide. So big picture really is we're now, as you know, in another national lockdown that's likely to go on for another few weeks to come, unfortunately. That has resulted in the government releasing further funding for councils to award to local businesses, both in terms of some fixed mandatory grants that businesses are eligible for, that Kevin will go through, but also some further discretionary funding that's available to help us at a local level get into some of the cracks of the business support schemes that we know have existed nationally, and we've been as all-encompassing as we can in that discretionary support. We've also got, though, from the overhang, from the very kind of quick acceleration we went between different tiers in the COVID restrictions before Christmas, that means different grants are available from different periods of time that are still able to be claimed by businesses. So quite a complex picture at the moment as a result that we'll take you through. The big picture is all of this support is there to try and help get businesses through to the other side. The vaccination programme is being rolled out nationally and in Mid-Sussex, and at some point restrictions will clearly begin to be lifted, and we want businesses to still be there and be able to move forward as much as possible at that time. We certainly know the grants won't be perfect, they won't meet absolutely every cost that you are suffering if you're closed or restricted in some way, but they hopefully go some way to helping do that. And our team wants to be as responsive and helpful as we can be, and we use our discretion as much as we can to make sure that we can provide practical support to you through what I know is an exceptionally difficult period of time that's been now running on for a long time as well. Just alongside the government-funded grants that Kevin's going to come on to, I also just wanted to highlight a separate grant scheme that the council was running from its own funding as well. So that is a COVID recovery grant. So a £300,000 pot that we had identified before we started going back into all these restrictions through the autumn to support businesses and community groups eligible for that one as well. Particularly, it's not so much an income support grant, but more around adapting, innovating, and recovery. So a first round of grants have already been heard. About half of that fund's been awarded already, and the second round closed in the last few days and are being assessed. If that funding remains open, we will open a third round of applications in due course. So I just wanted to flag that that's also going on, and so look out for any reopening of that, which we'll communicate if that's the position we're in. But I'm now going to hand over to Kevin Stewart, who will take us through the rest of the presentation. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Jonathan. And can I just state that we will be sending a copy of these slides to all the people who have registered for this. So you will get a copy, so you won't have to take studious notes of it. There are a lot of slides, but I'm going to try and go through them as quickly as possible. Can I also state that we will try and keep you updated as much as possible, because as Jonathan's rightly said, things are constantly changing all the time, and the grants have constantly changed all the time. If you don't want to be kept updated, just send an email to the COVID-19 grants email address, and we'll make sure you're not included in that, and that's quite important to us as well. What I'm going to try and go through at the moment, quickly through this to allow sufficient time for questions, is the business grants, the relief that the grants that we've given, a small bit about business rates, discounts, and also some of the rules in respect of the grants, because it is very complex, and we're trying to encourage people to claim for these grants. And please note, for the current round of grants, you may have to apply several times, and we just want to highlight that as well. We're originally given the spring discretionary grants. We're originally given 1,463,500 by the government to Mid Sussex District Council for the spring discretionary grants. We did give out all bar £10,000 of that. I do raise that quickly. I haven't gone too much into the previous grants. We paid out 26 million to the retail, hospitality and leisure grants and small business rates relief grants before, to any business that met that criteria, 2,300 grants in total. I really want to concentrate on the newer grants. So, but I just want to explain about the discretionary grant scheme before. It had slightly different criteria. So you might have found that you qualified for the grant scheme then, you might not, the qualifying criteria is very different this time, and I'll come on to that shortly. Before, if you got a mandatory grant, the small business rates relief grant or the retail and hospitality and leisure grant, you wouldn't get a discretionary grant. That isn't the same this time, and I'll come on to that as well. And can I say the support of the leader and the elected members here has been absolutely fabulous. It's not just me doing the grants. Fortunately, I've got a wonderful team behind me, and they've done a sterling job, and I want to pay tribute to them. Those original spring grants, both the main business grants and the small discretionary grants, spring discretionary grants, closed at the end of August 2020. We've repaid money to BIS of anything that was left over. We actually paid 98% of our main business grants back then, and we paid all bar 10,000 of our discretionary grants. So you're talking a lot of figures. What I also want to do is just go through some business rate discounts before I get onto the major part of the grants. The expanded retail discount is for the retail, hospitality and leisure sector for any business rates payer. Now, basically, if you've got customers who visited your premises pre-COVID, wholly or mainly, and anything above 50.1% or more, you can actually apply, if you're a business rates payer, for a business rates payment holiday in 2021. Now, you're probably going to ask me, is that going to be extended to 21-22? I don't know that yet because no decision has been made. All the signs are that the decision will be made one way or the other at the spring budget on the 3rd of March. That's by the Chancellor of the Exchequer. There's no rateable value limit on this, and the property did not have to be closed. You had to meet the criteria of actually helping the customer. So this was a specific discount that gave 100% business rates discount to any business rates payer. The nursery discount, also the early learning register for anyone up to 5. We actually have given a discount, 100% discount in 2021 for those properties. All told, these discounts equate to nearly £24 million across Mid Sussex District Council, and is help that we've been given by the government to pay this. If I just show you the scale of this compared to COVID-19, prior to COVID-19, you'll notice we paid out retail discount of 1.4 million previously. So we are talking a lot of figures. As I said, the main purpose is to actually do the grants, and there are some figures from the original one. And we do publish a list of all the payments we've made on the Open Data website. And in respect to business rates, we don't publish personal information, but we do publish details of businesses that are being paid grants, and you can get a full list on that particular property. I'll now come on to the current grants, because that is the main subject I want to cover today. And basically the main grant started from the 1st of November with the sector grant, but the main for most businesses would be from the second national lockdown from the 5th of November 2020 to the 1st of December 2021. We called this the second national lockdown after the first national lockdown in March. Originally it was to be to the 2nd of December, but they changed it to make it from the 1st of December, and that was for 27 days, but we did pay the grants for 28 days. Tier 2, as you know, was introduced to Mid Sussex from the 2nd of December 2020 to the 25th of December. Now, in the national lockdown, the government mandated businesses to close, and that is by regulation. So if you were mandated to close by the government and pay business rates, you would qualify for a grant. Tier 2, the 2nd of December, and there was no rateable value limits on that, but there would be state aid implications if you had issues on state aid, and I'll come on to state aid in a minute, because from the January 2021 lockdown, it started different rules. In Tier 2, there was a much smaller number of properties mandated to close. I'm looking at wet-led pubs that sold more drink than food. They would be shut, but most businesses were able to continue to trade, albeit in limited trade. Now, for that period, not only was there closed grants, but there was also open discretionary grants available, and I will cover both of those in this presentation. From the 26th of December, as most of you know, in Mid Sussex, we entered into Tier 4, which is basically virtually the same as a national lockdown. A similar amount of businesses will be shut down, mandated to shut, and therefore very much a similar sort of, I would say there's very few differences between what's shut in a national lockdown. I think one I can remember is a zoo, but very few differences between that and the national lockdown. And that went on to the 4th of January. And then we had the third national lockdown from the 5th of January. How long this will last, and the grants currently are to the 15th of February. The Chancellor did make a statement on his economic update, committing it to the first 3 months, which would take us up to the end of March, which is when the current regulations end. That is quite complex. It probably gets even more complex when we talk about the different periods. And what I have done there is a table. I'm not going to go through all that table now. It's quite complex, but that tells you all the respective grants we've got, the periods, the rateable value connections, and the maximum amounts and the amount of grants that we actually pay. So for the new grants, what they generally call it is a local restriction support grant. And basically, if you're in Tier 1, Tier 2 or Tier 3, they're for closed sector grants. Basically adult entertainment, nightclubs, anything like that. I'm not aware of any facilities that are actually rated in Mid Sussex on those. So if anyone does know any, do let us know, and we'll look to see what we can do. In tier 2 or 3, not in tier 1, if you're in that period, we'd have a closed local restriction support grant. So very, very small in number. I talked about the pubs earlier on. It's probably some hospitality venues, a lot lower than what was before. Then if you're in tier 4 or national lockdown, it would be the closed addendum that would apply, which is basically no open discretionary scheme. I'll come on to the discretionary scheme itself, but very much a lot more grants to any business that's mandated to close during that particular period. And I'll talk about the restrictions in respect of there. There is also the additional restrictions grant, the discretionary grant, and I'll cover that in greater detail later. But that is open for any business that does not pay business rates, that does pay business rates but isn't mandated to close, but has to close to reduce footfall through health and safety, through a variety of different reasons, and also for any business that has got a closed business grant that wants a top up because it hasn't met all their costs and details, the criteria for that particular grant. So they can apply as well. We also, from the 2nd to the 29th of December, had the wet lead pub for Christmas, the £1,000 grant, whether you're in tier 1, 2, 3, tier 2, tier 3. That was an extra £1,000 grant for any pub that could show in their takings that for a specific point in time, they had more alcohol takings, drinks takings than they had in food takings. Slightly different criteria to the closed criteria. And then, of course, you had the business support package for January 2021, the lockdown, the up to £9,000 grant that was announced by the Chancellor the day after we went, the Prime Minister announced we were going back into lockdown. And I'll come on to that later. For any of those anoraks out there, I've given you there the links to actually read the guidance, the government guidelines on all these grants. I've studied them quite at length. I am on the working party for BIS and I'm quite involved with it. Can I say that the guidelines aren't they are through ministers and everything else. So we can give guidance sometimes, but they don't always follow what we in local authorities tell them. But there's a lot in there for you to read and information on that. As I said, the closed addendum, you must be a business rate payer. You must be mandated to close by the government. Now, I know we've got some car showrooms that have also got garages on this call today. In respect of that, if your showroom accounts for more than 50% of your property, you would qualify for a closed mandated grant. You just need to show that to us and apply for the grant. What we would then do, you could still be trading for the garage. You could also apply through a discretionary grant as well, for the additional restrictions grant, because you might have reduced footfall in your garage as well. But anything where you're over half is actually to about the premises that's closed, we would treat as closed. And there is legislation, and I've also given you a link to the closing the businesses at the bottom of this, which shows you all the businesses. But if you're in doubt, just contact us and we will see what we can do. And I've got some email addresses for you later. Please note, and the Chancellor in his initial press release didn't help us, these grants do not apply to just the retail, hospitality and leisure sector. They apply across the board to any business that is actually mandated to close, that is actually paying business rates. You can still offer takeaway and you can still offer click and collect, and you can still get these particular grants. And closed grants, very limited closure in tier 2 and 3. And I'll come on to the same amounts for the number of days, but very a much smaller amount. And as I said, it has to be a business rate payer, has to be mandated to close, must be wholly or mainly a part of a business that is closed. Make sure you do apply. If in doubt, do let us know. And that actually explains the actual payment rates for the period. Can I just explain that for the current period from the 5th of January to the 15th of February, it is 6 weeks. So for tier 4, you actually do get £4,500 grant payment if you qualify, plus the £9,000. So you can get £13,500 in respect of that. The open grants, when you're in tier 2 and tier 3, this is a discretionary grant. Does not have to be a business rate payer for this, so you can apply if you're not. Must be closed by choice or seriously affected by COVID-19. You cannot get this if you get a closed grant, and this doesn't apply in a national restriction or a closed addendum restriction like we're in Tier 4 from the 26th of December. And once again, not limited to just the retail, hospitality and leisure sector. And as I said, limited closures only in this period. So there are more people that would probably qualify for an open discount. You can get the additional restrictions discretionary grant on top of this as well. There is some guidance on there. I haven't put the link on this. My apologies for that. I'll make sure when this link goes out that you do have on our website, which I'll come on to later. We've actually got links for where you can get guidance on which businesses could qualify for an open grant. The open grant amounts are slightly less, and they can be up to, and they're the amounts for 28 days and they're pro rata. And I will come back onto some of the mechanics behind the dates and everything else shortly. The wet lead pubs, basically you had to be a wet lead pub for the period from the 2nd to the 29th of December. It's based on more than 50% of your drinks takings, need to show accounts, can be any tier, and needs to be a business rates payer, and there's a flat rate of £1,000. I will go on later on and explain for the pubs which particular grants that you can actually apply for, because that one is a good example to use. The business supports package from January 2021 lockdown. Once again, all businesses mandated to close again. Using the same link I used earlier on to find out which businesses are mandated to close. Once again, not just the retail, the hospitality and leisure sector, and must be a business rates payer. And don't forget, because you've got the £4,500 I mentioned from the closed addendum for the same period, you can get a grant for any bit of property over £51,000 and over rateable value. You can get a grant of £13,500 for this 6 weeks. By the way, it is one claim you make for this particular period, because I know a number of you will say, well, we've got to make multiple claims. It is one claim. We will pay once, but the amount will show as 2 amounts in your bank account, because the government agencies quite rightly want us to reconcile and budget properly for all the payments of these amounts. As I said, it's one grant claim, one payment. We'll pay by backs on the same day. And once again, it shows the amounts. Now, we have emailed all the businesses we think will qualify for this, but there may be more out there. So please, if you have any suspicion that you'll qualify for this grant, do please get in contact. Do search our website and do look at our online grant approval website, because if we're aware of you qualifying and you put your property reference that was shown on your business rates bill, it'll actually let you go in and apply for that specific grant, and I'll come onto the website shortly. I also mentioned about the additional restrictions grant. This is a discretionary grant over and above, and the council has had nearly £4.4 million from the government to actually do this. All told, we've had nearly £50 million to spend on grants in Mid-Sussex alone this financial year. As the leader said, my main job is business rates. I knew nothing about business grants until this year, so it's been a whole new education to me as well. This is meant to help with fixed property expenses, and not meant to help with salary or directors' fees, because the job furlough scheme is meant to help with that, and also other schemes that help, like the self-employed income support scheme is meant to help with that. You do not need to pay business rates, as I've already said, and it can top up a closed business grant, and you can claim if closed through COVID-19, if not mandated, also income seriously affected. And I know a number of you have written to us, you're a garage mechanic, you're just saying, well, I'm not mandated to close, but I've had to close because my business has just gone down. There's just no one coming through. You can apply for additional restrictions grants, and these can be in addition to other grants. Unlike the last time where it was very simplistic, it was either one grant or the other. These are a multitude of grants and a whole range of them. We have got agreed guidelines. We've agreed guidelines with all the 7 district authorities in West Sussex. And can I say that all bar 5 of them are, all bar 2 of them are actually on the same electronic online system at grant approval. So if you're making multiple claims for a business in different areas, you should still follow the same process in terms of applying for the grants. We're actually applying the additional restrictions grant in separate funding rounds. The first funding round finished on 13th of December, and the second funding round finished on the 10th of January, and the third funding round will finish on the 15th of February. And that means that you can apply for a different grant each funding round. You can make a new application for that for each funding round that we have. However, you can only apply once per funding round. You may be able to apply for more, but I can assure you the system will pick up if you do multiple claims, and we'll pick that one up. The funding rounds are displayed for the first three in the guidelines that was approved kindly by Jonathan, our leader, early this week. We will continue to promote and display further funding rounds on the council's website that I'll come on to later. Can I just ask, please, because I know this is desperate times for businesses, but my team are working incredibly hard to turn around these payments. Please, after a funding round's closed for 10 working days, can I just ask not to follow the chasing up of the grants, because we're trying to get these payments out to people as soon as possible. We will do our utmost. We've been working weekends, as I've said, to get payments out. We'll continue to do that, and we're working long hours to do it. But please help us to help you. That would really be appreciated. The additional restrictions grant can be any amount. It's up to £400 maximum for taxi drivers. It's up to £1,000 for sole traders. It can be less than that. It's up to £1,000 for market traders. Up to £4,000 for all closed properties up to a 15,000 RV, or property costs up to 15,000 RV. It's not just rateable value. It's or any property costs. Can I also state you may be working from home? You can still apply, and we'll use the proportion of your home costs. Just give us as much evidence when you apply of your home costs as possible, your council tax, any mortgage, any insurance costs, etc., because we will take that into account. Just give us as much information as possible of your fixed costs, and you can apply. It's also up to a maximum grant of £6,000 for all closed properties between 15,000 RV and 51,000 RV, or property costs between those values as well. And it's up to 9,000 for all closed properties 51,000 and over, and any property costs up to 51,000 and over. So we have increased those amounts following feedback to the council. We worked with the other district councils to agree those increased amounts, and we are funding round 2 on those maximum amounts, as some of you may have noticed, and others will shortly find out. Please note, I stress again, they are maximum. You may get less if our evidence points to you getting less. All business grants can be claimed at our grant approval website. We do use a third party. I can assure you it's very legitimate. We use a third party website. We actually brought them into use for the initial grants. We're one of four authorities that use that website. And I think it's fair to say we were virtually building it as we started paying out the grants to start with. And the system has been greatly refined since. And I'll come on to certain things that you can actually do in a second on that. There's now 24 different authorities using that website. So I don't think we made a bad choice. I think they've given us a lot of information, and some of the statistical returns go directly from them to BIS. So really given us a lot of help. So if you're a business ratepayer and you're mandated to close, apply on this website. And the website, if you enter your property reference number that goes on your bill, it should actually show you all the grants, all the respective periods you can apply for. Now, if you're a pub, you can apply for the grant, for the closed addendum grant from the 5th of November to the 1st of December. You can also apply, if you were closed, for the closed grant from the 2nd of December to the 15th of December. You could also apply for the grant from the 16th of December to the 18th of December in Tier 2. You can also apply for the grant from the 19th to the 25th of December. We then entered Tier 4 on the 26th of December, and it was a closed addendum. So you get it from the 26th to the 4th of January. And then you could apply it again for the closed addendum, a national grant business support package on January 21 for the grant from the 5th of January, depending on the RV, up to 13,500. In addition to that, a pub can apply for a wet-led pub grant. They can also apply for a discretionary grant. For anyone that's been quickly adding them up, I think that's 10 grant applications already just by them alone. So it is quite a complex side, but we have been working to actually get the system to help you more. It's not so helpful on the discretionary grants, but we are looking to see what more we can do. But for us, the system has been a godsend, and we have been listening and trying to make it more simplistic for businesses. You can apply for discretionary grants as well as the mandated closed grants. And as I said, just apply for any grant that's respective to your period. It's important. We want you, as the leader said, to get every sort of help we can give you. It might be a little cumbersome applying for the grant. We do bring as much data as possible. So hopefully there's January lockdown grants. If you've applied before, it will just be a simple question of checking the information and clicking everything is true and fair and changing anything you need to change. And we are trying to get payments out as quickly as possible. In the first set of grants, we were paying within 72 hours. There's an initial purge on grants. We had 500 grant claims over the weekend. There's a small backlog, but we are doing our best to actually clear them as soon as possible. There is our grant approval website. It also does test and trace £500 payments for self-isolation, as well as the business grants. And once you come up, if you enter your property reference in, you'll see all the different grants come up and actually show you on the system there. As I said, is a website we've used, and my staff do actually, and I do believe it's been a real godsend to us in respect of there. Yes, we do ask for a claim. It's just because we have to reconcile to the government agencies, the government bodies, and we also have to do returns, and we also have to cover for fraud and for state aid as well. So I'm sorry that we do ask you to do claims, but it is a necessity we have to do. We've also updated the council website on these business grants. The link is there, and we set up the website so you can actually do different business types and show you what you can claim for those different business types. We've tried to make it friendlier for a system that, as you can see, is quite complex. And we've got tables on it, there's guidance, and it gives you links to apply for it. And the application is for a Mid-Sussex email address. If you go from our website, if you click grantapproval.gov, you can still get it, but you'll have all the 24 authorities and you'll have to enter Mid-Sussex, the specific authority. Please don't apply for a different authority unless you live and pay rates to them. Please apply on the Mid-Sussex one for us, because it will go off to somebody else if not. There's a copy of the different business types on our website. It shows the logos. If you click on the logo, you'll be able to go in and see more information. And there's a whole ream of guidance going down here. We've got the guidelines for the additional restrictions grant, and we've also got guidelines for the tier 2 and tier 3 open grants. And there's links to the government guidance. And can I also state the BIS last Friday published a questions and answer thing. We've also put that information on the website as well, because we wanted to try and be as open and transparent with you as possible. Can I ask that you make sure you read the guidelines when you apply and the guidance for the grants? When you claim online, do make sure you use your property reference. Even when you apply for a discretionary grant, do make sure you apply for all the available grants, and we're hoping the system will help you doing with that. Can I just state, at the moment, we believe about 40%, and we had 98% take-up before, about 40% of people have applied for grants so far in this system. There's still a lot of businesses out there that can apply for these grants that haven't yet applied. And we will do our utmost to try and reach out to those, but need your help for that. If you've got issues, we've got a business support email address there, and we are answering that throughout, and we've tried to keep that as up to date as possible. For all claims, please do provide the required evidence. If you can give us as much evidence as possible, it helps us to help you. Property expenses, rates bills, council tax bills, insurance, anything in respect of your fixed property expenses. And also, if you've had a loss of income, bank account details, everything is confidential, it will not be shared, and dealing with that. Also, any trading accounts, things like that, do make sure you give us as much evidence as possible, and keep checking the website for updates, because I think further information will come on these grants. There are going to be further changes, because I can assure you the guidance has changed constantly in respect to there. As I said, the current grants go up to the 15th of February 2021. Apart from the additional restrictions grant, the discretionary grant, that is a spend that goes to the 31st of March 2022. The government said they wouldn't top it up, but they've already topped it up once. So I don't know the future, I've got to be honest. If we continue in a national lockdown, there is likely to be further grants from the 16th of February. And additional funding rounds of the additional restrictions grant, we will broadcast them, we will display them. And we are here to help local businesses in their hour of need. I've gone to business associations, and can I thank those business associations for all the airtime. I've got the Haywards Heath Business Association later on today at 4 o'clock. For all the airtime they've given us. And if you're not a member of those business associations, do consider that, because they've given us a lot of airtime to put out information of help and support to local businesses. Because I realise I've been in this business 39 years, and I think this is the biggest challenge in my career. And certainly I can't even imagine the impact it's had on all of you out there. So it's very, very important that we try and help you as much as possible. So far out these new grants, we've had about £60 million of funding. That is slightly increasing. There's more to come. About 40% take up of it. We are emailing businesses that we know about. From the first set of grants, we picked up a lot of intelligence, so we are emailing them. So far, and there's another 147 that we're paying out to, going out to be processed today. There's 558,332 additional restrictions grants spent, and we've just paid over £2 million of the latest business grant support. There's more work to do, and we need to promote more. So I welcome today. I welcome so many of you who have joined us. Thank you for your attention. I'll hand back now to you, Jonathan, for any questions.
Thank you so much for that, Kevin, and I hope people found that useful as a real canter through the various different grant schemes. So I'm going to move on to questions. So I've got some that have come through to me in the chat. And do feel free to send any furthers through. I'll deal with those first. Otherwise, if you raise your hand on Zoom, I will come to you after I've dealt with the ones in the chat. If I can ask people, if you can, to use the raise hand button on Zoom so it comes up on my screen, because we've got about 170 odd people in, so I need to try and identify everyone wanting to ask a question. But I'll go to the ones in the chat that I've got sent directly to me first. So the first one I've got is from Charlotte, and the question, Kevin, is if we didn't apply for anything in the first lockdown, can we apply retrospectively for that period if we meet the criteria?
That's a very good question, and Jonathan, I would love to say yes, but unfortunately the government have closed those grants off. So no, you can't. But what I'd say to Charlotte is let's maximise your grant and assistance now.
Thanks, Kevin. And I just have one on a similar topic from James. With the additional restrictions grant, can I still claim for round 1 and 2, as I did not know those were available?
Unfortunately, they have closed now. I'd suggest you apply in round 3. We can award, I didn't mention it, so it's a very good question you raised. In exceptional circumstances, we can award up to a maximum of 25,000 per grant claim. Has to be exceptional. It's within the guidelines. You have to meet the criteria. When you make your application, give us as much evidence as possible and state your claim.
Thank you. Next question I've got is from Samantha. Why have MSDC changed the criteria for applying for the grants made available to hospitality who had to close in the 3rd lockdown? Brighton and Hove City Council have released funds to those who were successful in the November application. MSDC are asking for more evidence. As this is a government grant, surely the criteria has been set and is not at the discretion of local councils.
We have to meet certain, it's a good question. We do ask for an application form because, trust me, the actual audit process and the fraud and the state aid issues are something we have to consider. We do ask for people to apply again. It should be a simple process if you enter your property reference again. It should be very quick, bringing across the information from before and just confirming all the information is correct. So it shouldn't be as difficult as before.
Okay, thank you. Next one I've got is from Richard. I'm a director of a limited company. The business is home-based and I'm a resident of Mid-Sussex, but the business is registered elsewhere. Can I apply for the additional restrictions grant with MSDC?
I would suggest on that, we've been having discussions in the office about that one, and there's still a debate going on at that moment. Apply, put down the full facts, and we will consider it. But please do state in your application the benefit you do give to Mid-Sussex businesses, etc., and help towards other people in Mid-Sussex. Just re-emphasise that.
Okay, thank you. Next one I've got is from Reese. I'm a limited company, minimum wage and no dividends as yet, non-business rate payer. I pay for a non-rateable workshop that I lease. I provide one-to-one services at multiple values. I don't know if the additional restrictions grant will apply. Will it? But it doesn't look like there's anything else.
I would say to that, if he's not a business rate payer, I would say the additional restrictions grant is the only thing that's available for him, and yes, he can apply.
Brilliant. So get an application in, Reese, on that one. Next one from Mark. Are there any grants for limited companies that aren't in the hospitality and retail sectors but have been severely affected by COVID-19?
In respect, can I just reiterate, you do not have to be in the retail, hospitality and leisure sector for the closed grants. You have to be mandated to close by the government. And I use the words mandated by the legislation, the rules. If you are affected, any business is affected, whether you're working from home or any business, by COVID-19, you've had to shut because of reduced footfall, you've had to shut because of health and safety reasons, you can apply for the additional restrictions grant. That is not linked to a specific tier at all.
Okay, thank you. Next one I've got is from Tessa. Are there any specific grants for recruitment agencies that have been affected by the current job market?
Recruitment agencies, I'm not sure you've been mandated to close. I don't think you have. If you can show that COVID-19 has affected your business or you've been closed because of reduced footfall, the additional restrictions grant would apply to you. So please apply for that.
Thank you. I've got Gary Barnshaw. Gary, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Thanks very much, Jonathan, Kevin. So we're slightly an unusual business in that we're based in Handcross. We're a sports nutrition business, and our business primarily supports all the mass participation sports events around the country. So we have products that go directly. An example is Brighton Marathon. We would support them in terms of their nutritional needs. Now, clearly, all those events have been stopped. We don't see a way forward really until April, May for mass participation. So not only have we not had any revenue for this year, but I've just had to write off £70,000 worth of stock that has come to an end of a shelf life, which clearly when it was manufactured in December of 2019 has now run out and we've not been able to sell it. I mean, we have given that stock to NHS and we've given that stock to the military just to try and, you know, rather put it into disposal. But is there anything that we can claim back, or is there anything that we can do?
If you're based in Mid Sussex, albeit doing a national service, I would suggest apply for the additional restrictions grant. Put in about there. It can, based on your property costs, and I don't know what they are, obviously, but based on that, find the category. You can have up to an exceptional circumstances and read the guidelines. And if you want any further guidance, just email us. Apply for that grant. I would certainly do that.
Okay, great. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Next one I've got that's come through is from Deb. I applied for additional restrictions grant on the 31st of December and haven't heard yet. Do I need to carry on applying for each grant round?
In answer to that, we have still got some outstanding. Some are actually going out as we speak today, and there's more that will be done hopefully later today or tomorrow. If you haven't heard, I'm hoping that you'll hear very soon. I do apologise for that, but COVID-19 has got to my team as well, I'm afraid. Yes, please do apply for each funding round. So from the 16th of February, I suspect we'll open again, but do check on the website because, like everybody, I'm keen to get out of this lockdown, certainly for local businesses and for everybody else, but I suspect it will still be here at that time. If it is, subject to the council's permission and obviously the members' permission, I would be looking to open up on the 16th of February again.
Thanks, Kevin. I think that's a really important point. In the spring, when it was felt that this was going to be a very sort of fixed period, you know, those grants were very much a one-off fixed amount. Now we're into a sort of longer ongoing set of restrictions. They are continually being opened back up. So please do. I know it's a one more thing to do when you're trying to keep businesses going, but you do need to go back periodically, unfortunately, and apply for the next time period on that. It's a really important point. Next question I've got is from James. We're a live events company. Live events have been disallowed. Which grant applies? We are home-based.
Can I point you, live events and events companies are specifically mentioned in the guidelines for the additional restrictions grant. Obviously, you can't get the closed grant, but I'd certainly apply for the discretionary grants. Once again, but give us as much evidence as possible, the impact on your business. We can help with fixed property costs, but they could be home costs and other fixed costs, etc. So I would apply for the additional restrictions discretionary grant.
Great, thank you. Next one I've got is from Emma. How do you apply if your workshop is at home or is mobile and you don't have a property reference number?
The property, that's a good question, Emma, thank you. You don't need to put the property reference in for a discretionary claim. Just give us as much information about your property as possible, and you don't have to enter the link, because obviously you won't have a property reference. Just put down the details of your property and everything on that side, but you can apply through grant approval for a discretionary grant without giving a reference.
Okay, next one I've got is from Roma. Does the criteria business rate payer include those who already get rates relief?
Very good question. I should say you should be liable for business rates. You could get small business rates relief. You could get retail, hospitality and leisure expanded retail discount. You could therefore get 100% rates relief for this year. You can still apply for a grant if you meet the criteria.
Thank you. I'm going to go to a hand up and then I'll come back to the questions in the chat. I've got a hand up from Anne's iPad. So Anne, would you like to unmute yourself and put your questions?
Hello, yes, I'm actually thinking of a friend of mine who has a fabulous deli in Hurstpier Point, and I spoke to him the other day, and of course he's still allowed to be open because he's selling food, but in fact his turnover is drastically down. So would he be applying for one of the discretionary grants? Is that what he's applying for?
That's a very good question there. He can apply for the open tier, the tier 2 discretionary grant, in my view, if you probably meet the criteria for that. And you could also apply for the additional restrictions grant, the discretionary grant, but worth him applying. If he's had reduced footfall, yes, he's open, but reduced footfall, he can apply for a grant.
Lovely, thank you for your help. Thank you.
No problem, thank you.
Thanks, Anne. Next question I've got is from Alex, and I don't know whether this is your team, Kevin, so I might need to just pick this up separately about the Community and Economic Development Fund. We were told in December that an application was considered in February, but now being told it's only March. I'm not sure that's your team, that fund, is it?
I think that's a separate team in economic development. I think that's to do with the Cabinet panel.
What I'll do, Alex, is I'll send you a message back with my email address. Can you just ping me an email with the details of that application, and I will follow that up for you. Next one I've got is Bill. I have a warehouse in Crawley that I pay on licence and an office at home. Can I take both properties into account when applying for ARG?
We do work quite closely with local authorities. If your warehouse is there, I'd suggest you apply on the Crawley claim for that. It depends what you do, what you use the warehouse for, and whether you're based at home. I would suspect we would link up quite closely with Crawley. We do from a fraud and checking point of view, in respect to joining up claims, etc. Without knowing more, and you're welcome to email business support at midsussex.gov.uk. I wouldn't like to quote whether or not we'd pay 2 grants. I'd be a bit suspicious of.
Okay, thank you. Next one's from Graham. Is there an expert that we can use to seek out all available claims to us? Kevin, you are said appointed expert, so what's the best way of people
if you go to the business support email address, I would say it's very difficult to find a complete expert on business grants, but we will try and help you as much as possible. But can I just highlight again, if you're a business rates payer, by putting your property reference on your bill, it should bring up all your different grants you can apply for, because we'll link that in. If you feel that doesn't work and you should qualify, I always use that at the first port of call and the website, because we have updated that. If you don't, send us an email and one of us, either me or someone else, will come back to you.
Thank you. Next question just comes up as iPhone, so apologies, I don't know whose name this is. Will a business rates holiday be automatically replayed if you receive it last year?
Right. I think I mentioned this in my presentation, Jonathan. As yet, we do not know if the expanded retail discount will go into next year. So if you get that in 2021 and a payment holiday, no decision has been made by the government to extend it. It's a good opportunity. I'm led to believe, I'm not certain on this, that there won't be an announcement until the 3rd of March, which gives us very, very little time to get the business rates bills out correctly next year. So I would suggest you watch the budget to find out if it's going to be included or not next year.
Okay, thank you. Next question I've got is from Lena. Have state aid rules been addressed yet? If not, please can you enlighten us? I've seen from another council the limit's been raised to £3 million.
Yes, I did mean to mention that in my presentation, so thank you for the reminder. As at the 1st of January, state aid limits didn't apply. We now have a subsidy limit, which is £3 million, yes.
Okay, thank you. Next one's from Carla. What about businesses that haven't had to shut down but have suffered a financial impact?
Once again, I'd point to the question I gave earlier on, Jonathan. You can apply for the additional restrictions grant, which is a discretionary grant. Certain types of business can also, in tier 2 and tier 3, qualify for the open grant, and there is guidance on a website for those open businesses. Apply for those grants. Help is available if you can show that you've had an impact by COVID-19.
Great, thank you. One from Charlotte. When Kevin said you can apply for the up to £15,000 grant if you work from home, does that mean you can do that if you don't pay rates and it's just your usual family mortgage?
Provided that you can show that you're working from home legitimately, yes. We would do a proportion of your household costs towards your business and work it out that way. So yes, if you're working from home, not paying business rates, using it as a base, an office there, or using it as a room, yes, please apply. We have awarded those before.
Thank you. Next one is from Alex. I'm a director of a company that has had to move from office-based to home working. There are 2 directors, myself in Ardingly and the other director in Surrey. Am I able to apply for the additional support grant?
I would apply, put as much information as possible, and just explain what the impact is in respect of there. It is a discretion of the authority without knowing the full circumstances. I don't want to comment on an individual circumstances. I'd certainly apply and see and give us as much information as possible.
Thanks. Next question is from Caroline. Which grant can parish councils apply for, bearing in mind halls are closed to hire, resulting in large loss of income that do not have business rates?
If you remember, Jonathan, in the first round of grants, town and parish councils were precluded from applying until the 7th of August. And when they closed the grant scheme on the 30th of August, it didn't really give them much time to apply. If you're a business rates payer, even if you get relief and your village hall is mandated to close, you can apply for the closed mandated grant, because parish councils and town councils aren't precluded from applying for that. You may have certain events on, like giving blood and everything else, but if you're mandated to close, you can still apply for that grant. The closed guidance does actually show examples of that. You can also apply for a discretionary grant. Town councils and parish councils are not precluded. As you know, Mid-Sussex and the County Council are precluded from applying for grants.
Thank you. Next question is from Richard. I'm a home-based business working within the travel and hospitality sector, selling to European travel companies, sending clients to the UK who buy accommodation and hospitality tickets for sports events mainly. I've not had any business or income at all since March 2020. I have home costs and have continued to pay council tax. Which grant is best to apply for?
I would certainly, we'd have to look at it on an individual basis and see the impact to Mid-Sussex, but certainly apply for additional restrictions grant and put as much information as possible about the loss of income and the impact on people.
Thank you. I'm going to go to James Mansfield, who's got his hand up. James, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Hi, yeah, sorry about that. I'd had some trouble unmuting. We, as a company, we're a live events company in Hurstpere Point. Obviously, live events have not been allowed and our business has not received any income since March. We received £10,000 discretionary grant from Mid Sussex back in April, which merely paid for the losses or the wages and the cost of the business that we'd lost from unpaying customers, customers that were affected by COVID and therefore couldn't pay their invoices. That affected us in a financial way before the effects of the lack of income from future business did. So the grant that we received in April paid for some of that loss. So it was sucked up quite quickly, basically. We then applied for a bounce back loan, which we received £50,000 through HSBC, which was there to provide financial assistance to, I suppose, reinvent ourselves into an area, using our skills to transfer our skills into a market that perhaps existed or perhaps we could try and take advantage of during the pandemic. We did that, and unfortunately the second lockdown and then the third negated us kind of fulfilling that. What my question comes down to is if we apply for additional restriction grant now and a discretionary grant, would our bounce back loan, the fact that we got a bounce back loan, affect our ability to get the grant awarded?
It's a good question, and I think you make a very good point. We can only act on the guidelines that are set by the government, and I would suggest that certain people didn't get the grant help the first time, the statutory grant help, and live events were certainly that impacted. In respect to the additional restrictions grant, the fact you've got a bounce back loan will not stop us from giving you a discretionary grant. Put as much information as possible in your grant application for the additional restrictions discretionary grant. We can award up to 25,000 in exceptional circumstances, but you have to meet specific criteria. We've given out very few of those because, as the leader said earlier on, we want to try and use the funds to give it out to as many businesses as possible to actually do it. So it is there, it is needed, and if we did make a £25,000 decision, we'd probably go and ask for the leader's ratification first anyway. So I would certainly apply for additional restrictions grant. A bounce back loan will not necessarily preclude you from that.
Thanks, Kevin. Next question from Darius. We deliver apprenticeships. I'm now having to purchase additional IT to be able to deliver to furloughed learners, a huge additional cost, but I don't seem to fit in any category. So is Darius eligible for it?
I couldn't help with the IT costs, but if you've got any property costs, even if you paid them, you could certainly make a grant application for those and see if we can help you and give you a little bit of funding elsewhere that may be able to release funds for other things.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Next one from Jenny. We're a local community radio station. Our studio is in a church. We've lost two main streams of revenue, advertising and outside broadcasting. Are we eligible for the additional restrictions grant?
Absolutely.
Thank you, nice and straightforward. Question from Neil. There are no open grants coming up yet for January yet on Grant Approvals website. When will these open for?
In respect of open discounts, I did state in the presentation they're only valid whilst you're in tier 2 or tier 3. So the open discretionary grants cover the period from the 2nd of December to the 24th of December. There's two specific grant periods you can apply from there, the 2nd to the 18th and the 19th to 25th of December. When we're in a tier 4, a national lockdown, it's a closed addendum grant, not a closed or open grant. However, the additional restrictions discretionary grant applies throughout, albeit in funding rounds.
Excellent, thank you. I don't think I've got any further questions. So if there is anyone who's got anything further to ask, do stick your hand up on Zoom now or put it through as a message to me in the chat. Had a couple of requests just for the details of the link for the information on the council's website, Kevin. So I don't know whether you could just put that slide up. It's towards the end.
Someone's taken away my screen, but what I can do is I've got detail. Yeah, I've got details of all the people who have emailed me. I will be sending copies of the slides, and I'll also give copies of the website and all information. That might not be fairly late today, as the elected members will know. I do work quite late, but I will send it out to everybody.
Brilliant. I've just, I hope I've just sent a message to everyone with the website address on, and the email address for Kevin's team is businesssupport@midsussex.gov.uk, and hopefully that has gone to.
Yeah, that's the website, and that will also include, Jonathan, the website to take you to grant approval as well.
Brilliant. Okay, I haven't got any further questions coming through, so we've hit bang on 2 o'clock in the hour that we said, so that's excellent timing. Huge thank you to you, Kevin, and your team for that. Hopefully people have found that really helpful, and I suppose my closing message really is please do apply and keep applying. That funding is there for businesses. We don't want to send any of it back to the Treasury if we can avoid it. So please do apply, and Kevin's team are here to help if you need any support through the application process. And thanks so much for taking the time to join this presentation. We had almost 200 businesses in at the beginning, so that's excellent to see people engaging. So thanks so much for your time, everyone.
Thank you.